All right, let's dive into something pretty fascinating today. We're going to talk about the hidden architect of your identity. You know, that mental blueprint that's quietly shaping your personality, your beliefs, and, yeah, even your future. It's a huge concept in psychology called the self-schema, and I promise, getting a handle on this can totally change how you see yourself.
Oof, does that thought sound a little too familiar? A lot of people feel this way. Psychologists actually have a name for it, imposter syndrome. And it's incredibly common, even among people who are at the top of their game. This very thought really captures the internal battle of a student we're going to call Lan.
So, if you just look at the facts, Lan is the poster child for success, right? Graduated with top honors, landed an amazing job at this huge corporation. To literally everyone looking in from the outside, she has made it. But inside her own head, she's completely convinced she's a fraud, just one mistake away from being found out.
And that brings us right to the heart of the matter. Why? Why can all the evidence in the world, the degrees, the awards, the praise from colleagues, still fail to change a really deep negative belief we have about ourselves? Well, the answer isn't in the events themselves. It's in this powerful mental structure we all have.
And that structure is called a self-schema. The easiest way to think about it is like an internal map of you that exists inside your mind. It's the blueprint your brain turns to again and again to figure out who you are.
So here's the official definition, which comes from psychologist Hazel Marcus way back in 1977. A self-schema is basically a collection of beliefs you have about yourself. Things like, I am hardworking, or, in Lan's case, I am incompetent. But here's the really crucial part. It's not just a static memory, like remembering your address. It is an active tool that's constantly organizing and guiding how you interpret everything that happens to you. And listen, we aren't born with these things. They're built piece by piece over our whole lives. Just think about it for a second. A kid who gets told over and over again that they're diligent starts to build a hard-working self-schema. So all of our experiences, the jobs we have, the things people say to us, they all become the raw materials for this internal map.
Okay, so we've got this mental map, but here's where it gets really interesting. This map doesn't just store information about you. Nope. It actively filters your reality. It literally shapes what you pay attention to and what you just ignore. Let's dig into how that works.
So our brains, you have to remember, are basically lazy. They're wired for efficiency. The psychologist Daniel Kahneman calls this our fast thinking system. It loves taking shortcuts. And the absolute easiest shortcut is to just accept any information that already fits with what we believe. When something matches our self-schema, our brain goes into a state of cognitive ease. It just feels right. So we don't question it.
And this ease creates this really powerful mental trap called confirmation bias. It means our brain actively goes looking for proof that our self-schema is correct, while conveniently turning a blind eye to anything that might challenge it. And this is exactly what's tripping Lan up.
I mean, just look at this. This shows the whole process so clearly. 10, 10. Colleagues can tell Lan she did an amazing job, and her I'm not competent schema filters it out as, oh, they're just being nice. But one person gives one tiny piece of criticism, her schema grabs onto that and just screams, aha, here's the proof. I knew it. The schema isn't just reflecting her reality. It's literally creating it.
Kahneman has this fantastic acronym for this, YCAIT. It stands for What You See Is All There Is. Our fast-thinking brain doesn't bother to go looking for information that's missing. It makes these super confident judgments based only on the very limited evidence that our schema has allowed to pass through its filter. So for Lan, the only evidence that feels real is the evidence that confirms her incompetence.
So we've established that schemas filter our reality in the present moment. But their power actually goes way beyond that. They don't just interpret what's happening now, they start to actively dictate our future.
See, our schemas are what let us imagine our possible selves. These are the mental pictures of the person we hope we can become, or maybe the person we're terrified of becoming. And these are not just daydreams, okay? They are powerful motivators. They act like goals that guide our actions every single day.
And as the expert on persuasion, Robert Cialdini, points out, we have this really deep psychological need to be consistent. We hate feeling like hypocrites. So once we accept a label for ourselves, whether it's I'm a responsible person or I'm not really a leader, we instinctively start acting in ways that line up with that label. We do it to avoid that uncomfortable feeling of inner conflict. So what happens when you combine a negative self-schema with that powerful need to be consistent?
Well, you get a pretty destructive cycle that you've probably heard of, the self-fulfilling prophecy.
Let's walk through how this plays out for Lon. It starts with that core belief, I don't deserve this job. That belief then causes her to behave cautiously. She won't speak up in meetings, she avoids taking on bigger projects. Well, what's the natural result of that behavior? Her performance might actually suffer a bit. And what does her brain conclude from that? See, I knew I wasn't competent. The belief literally created its own evidence. Now, this might all be sounding a little bit depressing, but here's the really good news. Schemas are not set in stone. They can be changed. You can actually become the architect of your own reality, and the main tool for the job is something called cognitive restructuring.
The whole idea is to interrupt that automatic, fast-thinking system and deliberately engage our slower, more analytical brain. Basically, we have to learn how to stop and think about our own thinking. So here's a simple 4-step process. First, you've got to catch that negative thought right when it happens. The moment you think, I can't do this, you identify it. Step 2 is to create some distance. So instead of thinking, I'm incompetent, you reframe it as, there's my old incompetence schema talking again. See how that creates space? Third, you challenge it. You become a detective and actively look for evidence that proves that thought wrong. And finally, and this is the most important part, you have to act differently.
Because here's the secret weapon. Our attitudes often change to match our behaviors, not the other way around. If you act confident, maybe by speaking up in just one meeting or taking on one tiny new responsibility, your brain starts to update its own self-schema to get rid of that inconsistency. These small actions really can build a whole new identity over time.
So when you boil it all down, our self-schemas can be a prison built from old, outdated beliefs that just limit our potential. Or they can be a blueprint, a flexible, conscious plan that we use to build the exact person we want to become. The structure is the same. The only difference is our awareness and our intention. And that really just leaves us with one last big question. You now understand the hidden architect working away inside your own mind. So the only question left is, who are you going to tell it to build?